Hello and welcome to this week's live event. My name is Ailsa Kepi and I'm curator of this group, Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. And this week we're talking about kind of a more in-depth topic of how trauma can actually lead us into a place of isolation. It can lead us many places, but one of the places we may find ourselves at certain points in the healing journey is feeling a sense of isolation. And I was drawn to talk about this because, um, trauma is everywhere in the news and the media today, and trauma from emotional abuse, relationship abuse, can be one of the most devastating types of trauma because it's constantly ongoing. And so, most of us have experienced trauma and have symptoms of even post traumatic stress syndrome, these kinds of things that come about from long-term chronic stress and trauma. And this can, act on our psyches and on our spirits as isolating. And it can bring up all our fears of abandonment and fears of isolation, fear of being alone. A lot of this stuff can come up. And what I like to help my clients get to eventually is a place that, you might call it connection, or the love connection between us as human beings, or maybe between us as beings, if in a wider sense in the world. Eros is another word for that kind of life force connection. If we don't have that at all between human beings and between us and the earth, between us and other beings, we're really there's really no life at all, really. So that journey back to finding connection is one of the most important journeys that we can take. And going from a place of trauma and isolation to a place of connection and love, is a beautiful start and end point. And then we just need to fill in the bridge. What are the steps that get us there? And like I said, I've kind of worked on this. If you haven't watched my 5-step webinar on this, the way that this works, please do check it out. It's on ailsakepi.com. You can sign up for my webinar there and watch that whole thing. But today we're just going to talk about, that kind of feeling of disconnect that often happens when we've been traumatized. It's almost like we're walking in another world. And so there's a number of different ways that isolation comes up when we go through a traumatic situation or abuse. And fear of abandonment can be a beginning point for many people. That fear of abandonment often keeps us locked into an abusive relationship way longer than we ideally should stay there. We have this fear of being alone. It's very common in adult children of alcoholics, adult children of addicts of any kind. So, if you started off, if some of you who have talked to me on the breakthrough calls that I offer, if you started off with a family situation of your parents not being available for whatever reason and never being sure if they were there or not, it sets up a somatic response, like a body response of, are you going to be there or are you going to run away? And we can have this real sense of desperation about hanging on to a connection. And we'll hang on to any connection. And sometimes it's an abusive connection. We'll even instigate a fight just to get a response because it's like, are you there? Are you there? Kind of thing. And so this is very common with, if you've grown up with this kind of background. And again, we're not blaming our parents. We're not just sitting here going, oh, I grew up with this horrible background, therefore I'm doomed forever. That's not the entire truth. We can actually use this and move through it. Like I said, like I explained, there's this bridge of moving from isolation to connection that is part of life that we're all going through. So not to lose hope about that, but that fear of abandonment is often underlying why we ended up in an abusive relationship in the first place. And so we hang on for dear life to this, and we sometimes have um, an interesting idea of what connection is. This is one thing that I notice with a lot of my clients is when we get to the stage that we're like, well, what does a good relationship actually look like? What is a connection? What does love feel like? What does it feel like when someone actually loves and cares and respects you? What does that feel like in your body? And many of us have, didn't have an experience of that. So we have nothing to go by. So we're creating, things in our mind. And when we're creating things in our mind, sometimes we're creating a whole different reality up there that we can live in a lot of the time. And, that sense of creating this other realm where we can like create what we want it to feel like, but we're not actually in the real reality. It actually takes us away from being vulnerable and open to actual intimacy. So again, we can be in that place of isolation even before we got into an abusive relationship sometimes. So that's one of the things, and that kind of can lead us to looking for love in all the wrong places as well. And there's actually a really interesting quote from a woman that had a destructive affair with F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was an author, Irish, I think. My English literature might be off, but an author, and she wrote this quote, which I thought was really interesting. I looked into his face, searching it, trying to find its mystery, its wonder for me, and I said almost prayerfully, if only I could walk into your eyes and close the lids behind me and leave all the world outside. And I think that's that mystery of searching for completion through a love relationship, thinking that we're not enough by ourselves, that if we just find the right partner, we will somehow be enough. Again, it's dealing with this, are we enough as our own being, and what are we bringing to a relationship? And that sense of isolation and looking for someone else to make us feel whole can also be in the mix of leading us not just out of, we might have got out of one relationship, and I speak to so many women that just jump right into another abusive relationship because we haven't dealt with that sense of isolation, that sense of needing wholeness and completion through somebody else. So, this again is another reason that, we tend to feel, abandonment and isolation. So we have to come to a sense that being alone is okay. And, that can take time. It takes as long as it takes. Because, after the inevitable abandonment, most survivors do end up feeling that kind of emptiness that cannot even be described as depression. It's like your spirit has completely gone away. So yeah, you might feel numb to everything around you, to everyone. Things that once made you happy, you just kind of feel about. They leave you cold. And you kind of worry that this abuser or this abusive relationship has just destroyed your ability to feel connected. And so we come to this place of loneliness and isolation. And how do we get through this? And this is something that can be the longest thing to kind of recover from, this kind of being able to reach out again. Actually, one lady that I'm working with right at the moment through my 8-week program, I would say she went through this stage for a number of years before she was ready to really be connected, to approach being connected with the world again. And often that sense of connection starts with a great therapist or coach or somebody that you can work with, that you start building a trusting connection with, and that can start the journey. But I would say many people take quite a extended period of time in this place, and having this kind of wounded spirit, if you will, like you've been betrayed, hopeless, lost, all of these things. Um, this will ultimately be, I would say with 100% certainty, this can ultimately be your wisdom in the world. Your wisdom and your compassion can absolutely come from this place. However, it requires having a way to bridge these two places, like I said, and to come back to life. And so, if you can allow yourself to grieve, and I think we've done some videos, a couple of them at least, in here on grief. If you want to go and search those, search grief in the videos in the group. But grieving, the process of grieving, the process of learning to be okay with yourself, can take a while, and you need to watch yourself in this time. There's a few things you definitely want to watch for. If you start drinking, this is going to extend the time that you're going to stay stuck in this period of loneliness. If you start doing drugs, if you start, if you have anxiety, if you don't get out there and seek help when you feel like you're in this space of loneliness, finding someone that you resonate with to work with, to hold your hand and walk through this path with you. This is what I offer. This is what there's many people out there that offer, but finding someone that you resonate with that has walked this path, that will be there for you, and that can take you through this, is really important. And watching that you continue to function, but allow yourself time to grieve also is really important. And behind that grieving of past losses, there is probably a fear of being alone, like we talked about at the beginning. And it's essential to build this relationship with yourself. So this time of grieving, this time of being alone, is actually part of the process. So it's a time of sitting with your own self. I see this actually really strongly with one of my kids at the moment. They're early 20s, and they're finding that any time that she's not super busy and working and numbing out by being really busy, she has to deal with herself and her own feelings, and that brings up all of her stuff. And so this is kind of what we can be afraid of too, and we don't want to be on our own because we don't want to feel. And so, going from the numbing out phase to the feeling sad and being able to feel grief, that's a huge leap there already forward. Being able to feel sad means you can feel. Once you can feel, you can start feeling good again also. And this is exactly why I work with the body and I work with the feelings, like sensation feelings, and working with the body helps you to move more quickly through this stage than it might take if you didn't work on the feeling side of things. And so, yeah, that ability to be with yourself. I know my therapist back in the day, she was actually an ex-nun, interestingly enough. And it was, she said to me, she's like, I actually enjoy being alone. I enjoy my alone time. I like being with myself. And I remember, it's sticking in my head like, I haven't quite got there. I'm afraid of being alone, or I don't really like it. So now I would say that the same thing to you and pass it on. She was a very wise woman. She's since passed away, but she, that ability that she'd cultivated with the spiritual connection too, of being able to sit with yourself and learning to feel, was really important in that, making that bridge again from, walking that, isolation, and then actually coming back to intimacy. And really, I think what we're craving right from the get-go, what most of us are craving, all of us maybe, is intimacy. We want to feel seen, we want to feel heard, we want to feel loved, we want to feel touched, we want to feel that we are connected. And Dr. Gabor Mate, if you haven't watched some of his stuff, he is talking about addictions and as being related to this idea of disconnect also. And I would say that many addicts have been through trauma, so the idea that having had trauma of whatever type, many of you have had single traumatic events and also overwhelming long-term small traumas, and that it just keeps you disconnected from your own spirit and from really getting to know yourself. So it can really lead to this isolation, and you know hearing that, joining this group, being in a group of people that can understand that is a really great start. Finding someone that you trust, that as a guide or mentor, to walk your way through it. As I outlined in the 5 steps to overcoming the long-term effects of emotional abuse, I definitely recommend watching the webinar. I'll post it in the comments below, but it's www.ailsakeppie.com, AILSAKEPPIE.com. Sign up, watch it. It's free. If you feel called to reach out, keep reaching out. That's one of the things I tell people. If you've reached out and you've joined a group, that's amazing. If you reach out to a group in your area, that's amazing. If you reach out to a mentor, coach, or therapist, that's even the next step. And if you can keep reaching out to broaden your social network again, you can begin to build these relationships again and build connection, and actually bring that wisdom and that discernment that you've gained from having this experience of abuse and trauma. And now you're much more aware of people and who they are, and you can bring that awareness to your further relationships and actually cultivate healthier relationships. This is the process that we all want to go on. So again, if you want to reach out, I do offer free breakthrough calls. ailsakeppie.com/apply will take you directly to my booking. Book a call. I have a few spots available every week. I'd be more than happy to spend an hour with you. No obligation. We'll talk about your particular journey. How are you feeling isolated and trapped? And how do we get you to this place of connection? And I'd be more than happy to spend some time with you. That's a great resource. Reach out. I'm here. And for all of you that are not in the Facebook group, there's the Facebook group is a great first place to start. It's called Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. Look us up on Facebook. Join the group. Join the conversation. Let's build connection between all of us, help lift everyone up and find connection again. And, connection to animals, connection to the earth. We have so much disconnect in the world today. We need all we can get. So I believe that we are those people that can begin that journey back to connection. So it has been wonderful to spend some time with you. Again, my name is Ailsa Keppie. I'd love to speak with you more. Reach out. You can look me up. My website is pleasureforhealth.com. Reach out and let's connect. All right, take care.